This is the Life's Better podcast where we talk about how life is so much better with God, community, and purpose. Josh, a few weeks ago, I was listening to John Maxwell, and he was talking about this conversation he had with a CEO. The guy had built this company to be a multi-million dollar company. And John was saying how he was really transparent with some of his failures. He's like, hey, yeah, multi-millions, right? But there were a lot of misses along the way. And he was sharing story after story. And so John eventually just asked him, like, okay, if you could go back and you could erase one of those failures, like which one would you want to get rid of? And the guy paused for just a small amount of time. And he said, you know what, John, I've actually thought about that before, and I wouldn't want to erase any of them. And then John was just like, what are you talking about? Like, that's crazy. And he's like, actually, no, because if I erase the failure, I erase all the learning that took place because of the failure. And not only did I learn so much, I also developed character in the midst of those failures. I learned how to pick myself up. I learned how to build resilience. I learned so much and built so much character that it would be worth more to me to have that than to have everything perfect all the time.
Yeah.
And so today, with that as our little intro, we're going to be talking about failure. We're going to be talking specifically about how we can fail well. Now, before we get into the main content, we're going to be talking about some epic failures over the years. We're going to do basically a rate the failure game. I've got a list of some failures. I'm going to give you some categories, and within those categories, there are two options.
Okay.
And you choose which one is a bigger failure and why.
Okay.
And then you've got the same for me.
Yes.
Okay, so here's the first one. This is going to be categories like sports. I've got a couple sports ones here, but here's the first one. The Red Sox. The Red Sox traded Babe Ruth to the Yankees, where he would go on to hit 659 home runs and lead their team to 4 World Series. Meanwhile, what happened to the Red Sox? They had to wait 86 years to win another series. Pretty big fail, right?
That's rough.
Or, was that a bigger fail? Or Michael Jordan retiring at the height of his career, having just won 3 consecutive NBA championships, only to go and play AA baseball.
I gotta go with the Red Sox being the bigger failure.
Yeah?
Just because 85 years is I have some teams that I cheer for that it's just
Can you
it's
imagine?
agonizing.
Yes.
Being like a 10-year fan.
Yeah.
But 85.
Yeah.
And you it reminds. I thought you were gonna compare it to, I don't know if you're an NBA fan, but like the Luka Doncic trade, which everybody's talking about.
Right.
Where you're trading a generational talent away. And you're going to see this other, not only are you going to not get what you want, but you're going to see this other team succeed. And it's
Right.
I couldn't imagine. And Michael Jordan's like, what else does he have to prove, really?
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing about Jordan is he eventually realized, okay, maybe the baseball thing's not working out. I'll go back. And I don't remember. I think he won at least a couple more championships even after that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But when you talk about who's the greatest of all time,
Yeah.
most basketball purists will say Jordan.
Right.
So, he's fine.
It's true. It's true.
Red Sox, not so much back then. Okay, so I have a few sports ones as well. I tried to not have only sports ones, but that's where my mind immediately goes to epic failure.
Sure.
And so I have a Super Bowl themed one.
Okay.
The first Super Bowl fail is this year's Super Bowl failure, which is the Kansas City Chiefs. They were going for the three-peat, which would have been huge.
Yep.
And they go in and just, I think at one point the score was 40-6. It was embarrassing.
They were the strong favorites and blew it.
Yeah. And it was like a bad failure.
Yeah.
And then the other one I have is one of the most memorable Super Bowls I've ever seen here, which is in 2017.
Okay.
When the Atlanta Falcons were leading 28-3 at half.
Man, I know.
And choke the second half away to the Patriots, and Tom Brady seals basically his dynasty with this comeback win.
You know
which
what?
is a bigger failure.
I really enjoyed seeing the Chiefs lose. So for me, that was a win. That wasn't a failure. That was an absolute win.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to go. Falcons. What happened? That's just an absolute meltdown.
I think that hurts more because if you're a Chiefs fan, it's like, whatever. Like, we already have the rings. Like,
Yes.
even the players didn't feel like they cared that much about this loss.
And maybe
right?
that's how they ended up losing in the first place.
Probably.
Which is fine. Which is fine for me. Okay, next one for you. This one's on a political failure. So we got Richard Nixon.
Oof.
We got the whole, Watergate scandal,
Yeah.
him recording, criminal conspiracies, that thing. Or Bill Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Which one
Yeah.
would you say is the bigger fail?
I think, and I'm not big into history as you are, or as big. I've known more about how awful it was, like, learning about the Watergate scandal, and on top of that, like, just some of the decisions that he made that
Yes.
were so sleazy,
Yeah.
and it was just like people lost trust in the government forever, right after that. And so I would say the Nixon failure was a worse one.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I lived through the Monica Lewinsky scandal. That was huge when it was going on, and certainly on a moral level, like
Oh,
a
yeah.
massive failure. But I think Nixon has had far more repercussions.
Yeah, and like, honestly, it sounds awful, but like the Bill Clinton thing now, like, if that happened now, people would be like,
Barely
oh
a
yeah,
blip, right?
you and 50% of
Unfortunately,
political,
yes,
like,
I know.
but the Nixon thing,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot worse. All right, so we're gonna go out of sports. I'm gonna go back into sports each time.
Okay,
So
okay,
1,
okay.
3, and 5 are all sports. This one is two interesting stories about two companies who have now pretty much been completely eliminated.
Okay.
But they were, like, at their height of their, like, peak,
Yeah.
they were like household names.
Sure.
First is BlackBerry,
Okay. Yeah.
which was on the cutting edge of smartphones.
Yep.
Like, they figured out how to tap into, I forget, I don't know. I've seen the BlackBerry movie. It's really cool.
I never owned a BlackBerry, but I'm
But you
familiar with the
understand,
product.
yeah. And like, revolutionary.
Yeah.
And then their failure was when Apple started to push the smartphone, like the true smartphone with the touchscreen. They were like, no, people aren't gonna like that. They're gonna want ours with a keyboard and all of that stuff. And now you don't, like, they sold their company and everything. There's also some scandals and stuff with BlackBerry. But Blockbuster is the
Yes.
other one.
Yes, huge failure.
Huge failure, where they were, number one when it came to movie rentals and all of this.
Did you live during that time?
Oh yeah,
Period.
I
Okay.
loved going to, like, we
Yeah.
would go to Blockbuster.
That was everyone's Friday night activity. Yeah.
We would go to, like, we might have gone out to eat, and then we would go to Blockbuster before going home, watch a
Huge.
movie at home. And Netflix, when Netflix came out, and Redbox, like, they were just like, no, people aren't gonna want that. Streaming stuff, they're gonna want to still come to our store and rent our movies, and no one wanted to do that after a while.
I'm gonna have to go with Blockbuster being the bigger failure. Well, and I say that only because on the technology side of things, I expect it. Like, I expect there to be these innovators, and if you're not just on the cusp making moves and buying
Yeah.
different products, like, it's gonna happen to you. So I almost expect it. With the Blockbuster thing, though, that one just kind of came out of left field, and I don't know if they really, I don't know. Maybe they if they had a greater vision, but it just seemed like yeah.
Yeah, it felt like one of those things that they could have, like, we could have been talking about them still now if they made the move
Yeah.
that Netflix did and, like, went that direction. And, like, obviously that would change everything, right? Like, you'd probably eliminate their storefront, but Netflix
they'd
makes
still
way
exist.
more, I bet, than all, like, they would absolutely still exist, and they just didn't.
Yeah.
I think I agree.
So I'm going to go ahead and give you one that is certainly not a failure for the United States, but for the countries involved, yeah, I'm gonna say you failed. So here we go. France.
World War II Germany failure. I'm just kidding.
France making the Louisiana Purchase to the United States for $15 million, or Russia selling Alaska to the United States for $7.2 million.
That's tough. I'm gonna go with Napoleon
Okay.
as the bigger failure because he failed in a lot of other ways too. But he sold it for a quick buck to lead
Finance.
his war,
Yes.
which he lost.
Yes. Yes. So it's just like one after the other.
Epic fail. Now, I mean, looking back now, I mean, with how much Russia would love to be as close
Oh,
as
man.
Alaska is to us. That is probably a huge failure on their part, but
Yeah.
I think the Louisiana Purchase Napoleon thing was just way worse.
Yeah, yeah. Short-sighted for sure on both ends.
Oh, man.
And aren't we so glad that they were?
100%. Like a whole left side of our whole country could have been France.
Yes.
Or maybe probably what would have happened was another war. But but to be honest,
And we would have won that too. USA, US. Okay.
Next up for me is another sports story. So this one is to give you a little bit of insight into ones that I've lived through. Both were very, very entertaining, though. I
Okay.
can't say that I regret them. I loved both of them. But it was the 2014 and the 2015 UK Cats. So I'm going to tell you both of their stories.
You're gonna have to.
I will. It'll
Wait,
be
is
really,
one
really
of
easy.
them is one of them Christian Leitner?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't live through that one.
Okay, okay.
I just grew up hearing about how much we hate Duke.
Yeah.
But 2014 Cats was a pretty disappointing year, but it led to one of the most exciting tournament runs. I'll just say that of my life.
Okay.
We were an 8 seed, which in the tournament is really a 32 seed, right? Because there's
Sure.
4 8 seeds, 4
Right.
7 seeds, and we upset number 1 Gonzaga
Nice.
with the last second 3 by Aaron Harrison. We upset Louisville with a last second, but we upset Louisville. Then we upset Michigan, who was a 2 seed, on a last second 3 by Aaron Harrison.
Nice.
Upset Wisconsin, who was a 1 seed, in the Final Four on a last second 3 by Aaron Harrison.
Dude.
Made it to the final against UConn and lost. And it was just tragic. Like it was just like you felt on top of the world because we kept last second winning and we lost in the finals. And then
Yeah, that's tough.
2015 Cats, that team comes back. We go undefeated all season, 1 seed, make it all the way to the Final Four and lose to Wisconsin.
No.
And it was just like a shock to our system because I hadn't seen a loss all year, and I was so confident, like this is it, we're gonna win.
I'm gonna have to go 2015 on that one.
Okay.
And that's only because if you haven't experienced a single failure all season, to have
It
that in the
hurts.
Final Four, that's
It
just
hurt
so painful.
so bad.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the game, you're just like, that didn't happen.
Oh
We couldn't
my
have lost.
gosh, I can't imagine.
But
Well, sorry about that.
I lived through both, and they were, you know what? They were exciting seasons.
They
for
sound
sure.
like it, especially that 14 one. That sounds so exciting. I mean,
I made it on.
Draining threes?
Well, made it on. I and a group of people
Yeah.
at Emily's group at UK made it on Jimmy Fallon for our reaction to one of the shots.
Was that the he's got a camera and so he just like replays it?
So he showed the replay,
and
of,
you're like, yeah,
of
so
us
you
like
made it to
freaking
Jimmy
out. Mm-hmm.
Fallon. Hey, well, not only that, but if you read "Not a Fan" by Kyle Idleman, the youth edition,
It's true.
Josh has an excerpt that
Yeah,
has
the
been
Jimmy
published.
Fallon one is actually not as cool as I'm making it out to be. There was a lot of us, but I was a part of that crew.
I love it. I love it. 15 seconds, right? Or 15 minutes. 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, we're gonna go to a. I'm using one that you already used.
That's
but
fine. Is it Blockbuster? Because you
is.
seemed like
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's this one. After inventing the digital camera in 1975, Kodak fails to promote the product and eventually files bankruptcy in 2012. Or we've already talked about it, Blockbuster and their complete missed opportunity when it comes to the streaming situation.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go Blockbuster still, because cameras failed in general to keep up. iPhone has killed BlackBerry. They killed so many people.
Yeah, it's true.
Along the way,
Unless they can find some sort of way to partner with Apple with some sort of deal.
Oh man, but kids, y'all for some reason are bringing back like film and Polaroids and like all of stuff.
Polaroid, died like a year too early because now they're back, or at least other people are trying to mimic them.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Last one that's not a sports. These are 2 pizza chains that I grew up loving as a kid, both of which still exist, but they used to be like one of the most popular pizza places in the country. First is Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh yeah, no, I
remember
know
Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah. They're still rocking it in Lexington.
Yeah, but
I don't know if Chuck E. Cheese is like a pizza place. It's more like a child like play
Arcade.
place. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Sure,
But
pizza
like
place.
that in general used to be a lot more popular, right?
Yeah.
Like let's make an arcade, pizza, like all of this stuff. Weird animatronics.
Yeah.
But like it was the destination for pizza parties
Yeah.
and birthdays and stuff, and now I rarely hear about it. And then the second one is one that definitely failed in Kentucky, and I've since learned they filed for bankruptcy at one point. Now they're back slightly. Is Cece's Pizza, which used to be one of the fastest growing chains in
Is that
America.
right?
And
Yeah, the all-you-can-eat pizza. Man, okay.
their problem was they expanded too quickly though, and then they couldn't, support all of these places.
I'm gonna say the all-you-can-eat pizza experience is probably not like the healthiest for our country. So I'm probably more okay with them failing, even though my wife would be like, "How dare you? Cece's Pizza, all you can eat, and those whatever cinnamon
It
rolls."
used to be like really affordable too. Like you go there
Yeah,
and
like-
it was $3.99 a person.
No way.
Yes.
$3.99.
That was the price.
Then that's it. I mean, if they couldn't keep that going, man.
I mean, it's now like I
That's the
think
bigger fail.
$8.49, $8.50 a person, which is still like affordable now, but
Yeah.
like $3.99 a person. My parents were like, "We're going there at least once a week."
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. Okay, that's the biggest one. All right, my last one. My last one is okay. Tom Brady getting passed over in the 2000 draft by like everyone until
Multiple
the
times.
last round.
Yeah.
And so all these teams failing to pick up Tom is basically that one. Or what was it? The 2017 season. I could be wrong. Super Bowl. Perfect season, kind of like your Cats, and then losing to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl. Which one would be the bigger fail? Obviously, depending on who you are, right?
I think that's one season. It's got to be the failing to pick up Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Like
hard to know what he would have been able to accomplish in another organization
without Bill Belichick. And,
You know, there's so
Yeah.
many different things that go into that. But if Tom could be Tom on any other team, yeah, that's
you're
the
kicking
big
yourself
Yeah.
if you missed out on that. And then my last one, another sports. This one's the Olympics. I'm gonna go with USA 2020 men's basketball team having some of the best all-stars. There's a lot of drama where like all of these players just were more like, I'm the best,
Yes.
and they're failing to play as a
Sure.
cohesive team, losing in the finals to the French team. And we ended up taking it in 2024 away from them at their home place.
Okay.
And I loved watching that team play, but
I can't even remember
it was a
that they
failure.
lost.
Yeah.
They lost in the.
And it was
okay.
embarrassing. Like I mean, everybody made fun of us for a while because like this is your sport. Like
Yeah.
you should win this.
And if you've got a chip on your shoulder too, it's like in your face. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is 2004. Do you know the story of Matthew Emmons, the U.S. Rifle player who is
Shot like through the hole. Was that the one?
so
Or missed completely?
he needed one shot. He just needed to hit the target, gets a bullseye, but on the wrong target.
That's what it was.
Aims at the wrong target.
He aims at the wrong target.
Then he
gets
doesn't
a
even
bullseye.
place. All he needed was 6 points, I think, which if you know anything about it, it's like 10 points for bullseye, 9, 8, like, and he had just been nailing them.
And he was just aiming at the wrong one.
He aimed at the wrong one, got a bullseye.
Yeah, my heart's going out to him. That's the bigger fail.
Yeah.
All right, so these were some epic failures. Hopefully you guys enjoyed maybe a trip down memory lane. If you disagree with how we ranked it, too bad. You can comment about it. But what we want to do now is we want to talk about how we can fail well, because the truth is, like we all fail. Like it's
Yeah.
not just Tom, it's not just these teams, it's not just Brandon, was that his name?
Matthew Emmons?
Matthew Emmons. I mean, we all have failures every single day. And so how can we do this in a way that actually improves us? And so let's just define these for a little bit. When we talk about failure, the way we're going to define it is it's a miss, right? You had a goal, you had an objective, you had what success looked like, and you missed. You just fell short of that. And so what would it look like to actually fail well? Well, a good failure is when it moves you forward still.
Yeah.
You're able to continue moving forward. A bad failure is when you actually step backwards and you don't move forward. I think when you're looking at that example of the CEO that was talking to John Maxwell, it's the good failure is when you can make the adjustments, right? You missed, but how about instead of just completely bailing, how about we make some adjustments, we make some tweaks, and we continue to move forward. A bad failure is when instead of making the adjustments, you make excuses. You make excuses, you try to hide your mistakes, you try to blame it on outside influences that you had no control over, and you fail to move forward. Now, there's a lot of great examples of people who have failed well, and so we're going to share a few of those. Michael Jordan, again, going back to one of the arguably best player of professional NBA, he had a lot of failures before he became Michael Jordan. The one that everyone always remembers and talks about is his sophomore year of high school. He didn't make the cut for the team. Like, he was cut from the high school basketball team. Devastated Jordan. Now, in that moment, you've worked with students enough to know that that is just a ripe opportunity for a lot of excuses. What would be some of the excuses, having worked with teens for so many years, what would be some of the excuses that you would be expecting maybe Michael to make?
Coach likes certain players more than me. He was picking his favorites, had nothing to do with my skill level. Maybe I, had an off day, but like, I'm clearly better than all of these players.
Yes. I mean, the list is so long when it comes to the excuses that we can tell ourselves. But Jordan doesn't say any of those. Instead, he actually just practices harder. He just begins to develop his skills even more because he's determined that next season I'm making the team, and that's exactly what he ends up doing. He has this really great quote. He says, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. On 26 occasions, I have been entrusted to make the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Now, why do you think those failures are actually why he succeeds?
Oh man, he just lets that be his driving factor of, okay, I did this thing wrong. I'm going to make sure that next game I tighten, the loose screws and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and that's what it looks like to fail well. Now, Josh, you and I were talking a little bit last week and briefly just discussed how when we're sharing stories or illustrations, particularly when we're teaching, people seem to care way more about our failure stories than about our success stories.
It's true.
It's like, okay, what do you want to hear? You want to hear me being successful or me being failed? Give me the failure one. That's the one I want to hear. So what we're going to do with the rest of our time is we're going to share just a couple of our failure stories. And we're going to first start off with how maybe we've not failed so well, and then we'll talk about how maybe we've actually failed. We've missed, but it's something that we've learned from. So I'll go first. I'll start off with when my wife and I, Dana, when we moved to Nashville. I don't know if you know this or not, but when we moved from California to Nashville, we actually started a business.
No, I didn't.
So we started a business. At the time, the Joanna Gaines rustic barn look was like all the rage. And so we actually started to design and create and sell like home decorating items based on that like barnyard.
What everybody loves.
Yeah, exactly. Which you're probably thinking, really? Because you don't even decorate your office. and you're right. That's probably the first clue. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten into it. But it was like super hot items. We're like, oh, let's go for it. And so at the beginning stages, there was a lot of learning curve, and it was I'm failing, but I'm failing well because each failure was okay. I'll make this adjustment. Hey, let's make this adjustment, and we started doing fairly well. We developed some decent products, and we were able to sell them online. We were able to sell them in some retail outlets and at fairs, and even just word of mouth. Anything with the Nashville skyline. Like sold really well, so that's kind of
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's kind of what we really focus in on. In fact, the piece that I was probably most proud of was just like a behemoth. It was about like 5 feet across. It was about 2.5 feet tall, and it with barnwood, like actual 150-year-old barnwood. The Nashville skyline. We cut it out and mounted it, framed it, and the thing had to weigh like 2,000 pounds. It was not just put one screw on the wall and you're going to be good. No, you had to like double bolt this thing down. But anyway, we were making okay money, but we needed to be making like tens of thousands of dollars. Like that's what we needed to support ourselves.
Yeah.
And we weren't getting there. And so instead of continuing to make the adjustments, instead of continuing to make the tweaks, I just started making excuses. And it was the excuses of, well, I'm not a salesperson. I really just hate sales, and I wouldn't even buy these products. So if I wouldn't buy them, like how can I sell them? And well, I don't want to work with that retailer because he's a jerk and he didn't treat us well last time. And you know what? The market is saturated. I just made all these excuses till eventually, like the company, the business failed. And I don't know if I learned a whole lot along the way either. Like I learned how to like drive a nail, and I learned how to maybe like screw a screw. I learned that if you buy tools that are pretty expensive, you can sell them when you're done, used prices, but you can recoup a lot of your losses. So I've learned that too. You can just sell it if you don't want it.
Other people aspiring to have the same
exactly.
dream. Yeah.
You want to do this? You can. Buy my stuff. Yeah. Anyway, that was one of those bad failures. What about you, Josh?
Man, I've had quite a few, especially when I was younger. I was the type that just loved to make excuses for failures. One that I continually did not learn from was jumping into relationships. I notoriously did not date a lot on purpose my senior year of high school and my first year of college. People just knew I'm not going to go date anybody. I'm going to just focus on my relationship with God. What got me there, though, was a string of relationships my sophomore and junior year of high school that I kind of just put all of my hopes and dreams into these relationships. I was the type that was very clingy, like wanted to spend all time talking to that person, like called that person as soon as school was out, like all of these different things where it was just like I was a nagger, right? Like I was very, 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 I learned that.
You sound like a dream. It's just, all the girls must have been just chasing after you.
I very quickly learned that girls want their space at times. And I went through a string of just relationships where it started off like really great, and they're like, oh, he's like so attentive, and it's like, oh, he's too attentive, and then they would push me away, and I made the excuse of, oh, these are just like mean girls, like they're rude, they would break up and then very quickly start dating somebody else, and I'm like, oh, so they're just, they're cheaters, like all of that stuff. And I didn't learn from any of them. I will say that. And it took finally one that I did, I guess, learn from, where somebody at the end of the relationship was just like, you need to learn what you want to be before you are ready to, present that to somebody else anymore. Sure. And I was like, okay. I took my youth pastor's advice, like just stop dating for a while. That's good. And focus on you and focus on your relationship with God. And that was good. I was appreciative that they helped me, I guess, fail well in the end of it.
So was it your sophomore year of college then that you met Emily?
Was, like the beginning of it. Yes. Okay. I thought you were going to say the sophomore year of high school was when all that happened. No, or college. That was when, like at the very, very beginning of my sophomore year, I had met her over the summer, and we had started dating at the beginning.
And you told your youth pastor, listen, 2 years is long enough. I'm dating this girl.
Yeah, it was it happened. And I hate telling people that, but like, if you stop putting so much pressure on finding somebody and just start chasing what God wants for you, like if he's just gonna pull up somebody and it's gonna work. Like it just will. And I don't know. Nobody wants to hear that, though. Right?
Rather than working on, finding the right person, you need to become the right person.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. One of the individuals, at least here in the United States, that kind of stands out again as someone who failed, but he failed well, would be Walt Disney. I don't know if you know this, but he had a really rough growing up family. Like, it was really tough. It was so tough that he actually forged his signature so that he could be drafted into the army in World War II, just to get out of his house. And so he had a really rough family life. When he got out of World War II, he got into an ad agency. They had to let him go. He tried to start his own cartoon company. That went bankrupt. He eventually actually had a hit character. The character name was Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
So I guess it was pretty big at the time, but he failed because the contract that he wrote with Universal was not detailed enough, and he lost the rights to it. And so it was just like one failure after the other after the other. But he learned from each of those and eventually founded Walt Disney Company, which is now a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
He's got a quote that's really great. He says, all the adversity I've had in my life, all the troubles and obstacles have strengthened me. You may not realize it in the moment, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you. And I don't think most of us realize it in the moment. All we're realizing is, we're failing. But when you can continue to move forward, well, that's how you can miss the mark, but then eventually hit the mark. And so now we're going to share a couple of stories where we failed well. Still missed, but eventually hit the mark. I'll share another career failure.
Yeah.
So before becoming the senior pastor here at Anderson Christian Church, my wife and I, for probably just over a year, just experienced, I shouldn't bring Dana in it, me. I failed over and over again to actually find a ministry position. I was still serving at a church, and I was happy serving at the church, but I really felt like God was calling me back into full-time ministry. And for about a year, I think maybe just over a year, I just kept getting door after door after door slammed in my face. I had some say, no, you're too old. Others said, no, you're too young. I had one church tell me in subtle words, you're a little too California for us. And it was like, okay, I think I know what you mean, but all right. I had one say that they didn't like my sense of humor. I was too sarcastic, and they were 100% right. It was an awful interview, an interview that I just still cringe. I was just so off balance, and I'm cracking jokes and being sarcastic, thinking I'm funny, and then walking away going, yeah, that was a disaster. And then, talking to them later, yeah, it was a disaster. You're not getting the job. I had one church actually decline me because I didn't say yes fast enough. It was wait, if you don't know right away, what you want to pray for on a week, what you want to have another conversation. Well, if you don't know right away, then it's like, okay,
Shoot.
well, that's interesting. The worst ones though, were the ones where you didn't hear anything from them. Like you would spend a good couple hours filling out all the things that they want to be filled out and submitting all the and you gave it and you waited and maybe you even sent another email or a phone call like, hey, and you would get nothing. To the point where I started to kind of have this, well, I'm gonna start making some excuses. And I had this arrogant thought, and the arrogant thought went back to like Tom Brady's 2000 draft. And no kidding, I have this arrogant thought in my head like, they just don't know. They don't know what they're missing. Like I'm Tom Brady, and they're just passing on me. They're just passing on me.
Yeah.
And then I got this conviction of, Jonathan, actually, you're probably a little bit more like sophomoric Michael Jordan, who is actually not spiritually ready and who is not ready with leadership. And you actually need to work on developing your skills instead of just making excuses why they're not seeing the gem that you really are. And so that's what I started doing. I just started putting myself in more ministry opportunities, not paid, but just to stretch me. I actually was a part of a teaching team where at our church, they were developing teachers, communicators. And the whole time, like when I first started in that group, I was thinking, the guy who was teaching us, I was like, dude, I could teach you how to teach better. And I just had this real arrogance, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, no, humble yourself here. You may actually have some areas to grow. And sure enough, I was like, oh no, I actually learned a whole lot from this. And then, reading more books and listening to more podcasts and hearing from other pastors. It was a season of developing because, I was missing, but I realized I needed some growth, and similar to the relationship side, it's I need to work on developing my character and not just blaming it on them not seeing the quality person I am.
Yeah, it's hard too.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you also learned how to maybe notice when a church is going to be healthy or not.
Yes.
Because
Sure.
man, I don't even business side. Like there's a huge push to tell people my age and younger, like what are they supposed to do when it comes to like responses to a job interview.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always heard is if they offer it to you right on the spot and are upset that you want to think about it, it's probably not a healthy place.
Right.
Like
Good call.
it's probably would have been a really rough thing to step into.
Yeah.
But man, to have that experience, like, I apologize that there's so many places that said no, but like,
No, honestly, it got to the point
glad-
where when
hey.
I got the job here, it was like, really?
We're
You're
like-
into me? Okay.
we're like the last round Patriots that got a steal in the draft. So
Woo, Josh, making people feel good. Love it. All right, what about your learning well
yeah, so
or failing well?
yeah, I appreciate failure at this point in my life, and that's weird to say, but like it's funny that we're doing this podcast now, but like literally this week I had friends give me one of the best compliments ever. They were kind of picking on me, but it was like, I was like, wow, that actually, if you actually feel that way, that's really nice.
Yeah.
They said, wow, Doolin fails so gracefully. Like he does it so well, and he'll do it with a smile. And I'm like, I appreciate
Yeah,
that
that's
because there's always something to learn. And like really wins and failures don't matter that much in the short term. They might hurt, but like in the long term, if you can pull something away from it, it becomes a win. And one of those things that I've learned that with time and time again is youth ministry. There's just been a lot of times, especially with the cohesion of the group, that I've learned through failure. One being, I remember like 2 years early on, I had a huge group of homeschoolers, and I say huge, it was like 8 to 10, and I had a growing group of like public schoolers, and they did not interact. They did not ever want to interact. Sometimes they would argue. And more I heard from parents and I heard from students who were no longer coming to our youth ministry of, well, I just don't feel welcome. I feel like there's a divide. I feel like people stick to their like side and they don't interact, and that doesn't feel like a family. And you keep talking about how we need to be a family and we're not a family. And I just, every time it hurt, but at the same time it was like, okay, how do I change this? How do I change the culture? How do I make this better? I would hear from students like the same thing of, as we moved out of that, they would say things like, well, I don't have any friends in this youth group. And I'm like, well, like we're trying, like we're doing all of these, you can make friendships. And it was just like, I don't really want to give it a try. And it's like those hurt even more because it's like, we're changing, I promise. And it just took a lot of failure to finally get to a point where students that come feel welcome and they're excited to be here. And I think what I also learned was that like, if you can make a camp experience that is solid, students will leave and will stick to your Wednesday night crew for years to come because they remember how awesome that one experience was and how close they got to like 2 or 3 individuals. And they'll feel close to the whole group if they're at least feeling close to 2 or 3. And if I hadn't gone through that, and I had just like, especially when we were stepping out of it, and I had just been like, listen, this is what you guys are saying, and it's not true of our youth group, and I'm going to put my foot down, I'm going to be angry, and I'm just like, this is a lost cause because people just have this preconceived notion of what youth group is, then I would have left a long time ago, and it would have failed, and I would have, like, hopefully somebody else would have done well, but like I wouldn't have been in the position that I am now, and I'm glad that the failure never was truly a failure because it was something that I learned from and we took something from every single time. So
that's a good example. No, I love that. And I love the fact that you're stepping into that success of.
I will say, I'm not going to name names, but there is one student that is back now that a long time ago told me, well, I don't really have any friends here. I don't really feel good about trying to fit in, and there's cliques and stuff. Now they're here and they're back, and it's just like one of those things where it's like, it's cool, right? Like it's like we have changed, right? And they can see it.
And then after the podcast, I'm gonna be like, dude, who's the student, man? Who is it? So I'm going to give one more story of someone who has failed well, and it's, I don't know if you're familiar with this name even, Jack Canfield. You ever heard of that name?
No.
So he was rejected 144 times before he found a publisher for his book that you've probably heard, Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh yeah.
So 140 times, reject, 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 reject. And then when he finally got the deal, he was telling his publisher, this is what I really want to do. I want to sell 1.5 million copies within the first 18 months.
Wow.
And the publisher was like, you'll be lucky if you sell 20,000. Meanwhile, his book sold 8 million in the United States, 10 million worldwide, and that Chicken Soup for the Soul brand, it's worth over $1 billion. Here's what he has to say. He says, so the reality is that you just have to say, I'm more committed to my vision than I'm committed to your doubt or my fear, and just go for it.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good reminder, particularly as we're thinking through the things that God calls us to, the community that God is calling us to build. You know, if God has called you to a vision, well, you need to be committed to what God has called you to, even with the naysayers, and certainly even when those fears creep in and you might want to start making excuses. Instead, just go for it.